Hey there, scrappers and recyclers. It's Shark Scrapper. I get a lot of questions about what a computer is worth. And of course, the answers are all over the place. So the best thing I can do is to go ahead and weigh things up, break things down, and share the information with you all. This is a Dell Optiplex 9020. Come on, let's dive in. First things first, this Dell weighs 10 pounds, 10.18 pounds. All right, now this one's nice because it's got this latch to open up. Well, it's nice when it wants to cooperate anyway. That was funny. All right, we don't have a slot card here. That's unfortunate. We have one of the newer type optical devices, the CD-ROM, just a tiny little thing here. I just throw these in with shred. I know there's some people that want to go pull what board they can off of these, but at this size, there just isn't much board to worry about. There is a blue latch right down here. You have to push this up like that in order to be able to lift this up. You also want to take off this front part because that will get in the way at some point. You can hang on to it because you can just put it right back on the frame when you take it in to your scrapyard. All right, pull the plugs off of the hard drive. In this case, looks like we have a SATA. Let's see, yeah. Pull that out. That metal frame will go back in the shell. And we pop you off of the caddy. Now there's a tiny little bit of metal on here that you can try to dig off. It's probably just ferrous, or you can just chuck the whole thing back in the shell. We have more plastic caddy, but let's see. Toshiba solid state drive, 480 gigabytes. You can try to resell those. You can sell them as scrap. You can break them open and sell them as scrap. Whatever, whatever way you want to go with those. I'm going to get the plastic off of this and I'm going to weigh it up. Probably doesn't weigh hardly anything at all. It is a solid state drive after all. But we'll see what the weight is so we can consider options for what to do with that. And here we have some plastic trash. I do get a lot of people that ask me about recycling plastic. I am trying like a big dog or a big shark to find a recycler for my plastic. And it has proven to be very difficult so far. So we're going to keep looking. I'm going to get this wire out of here and we'll grade and weigh the wire. We're very fortunate with this one. It has 4 RAM sticks in it. So we have 4 gigabyte PC3. I'll check eBay and see if these are moving, and if they are, what kind of value we're getting for them. I'll also weigh them so we can look at their scrap value. These blue thumb latches, you just kind of pull those apart a little bit, lift this plastic airflow device out of the way. 4 screws on the CPU cooler. That's going to be a number 2 Phillips. Come on, you. And we got more to do with that. This crooked arm right here tells me this is an i-series CPU. We're going to get the heat paste cleaned up. And then we're going to take a look inside here. Now, I'm going to use my flathead screwdriver to just give it, I'm putting it right on the edge of the heat spreader and tilting it up so I can get hold of it. Because it's an i-series, I want to be careful with it. These can be sold to places like boardsort.com for their functional value depending upon their age. This is an i5 4570, so yes, This can still get sold to Board Sort for their test and buy program. So we'll look at what our potential values are for this as either a pinless CPU scrap value, or if it tests positive, what it would go for as a functional CPU. Put you off to the side for a moment. All right, get in here and get some wires cut loose. This is just a little switch that cuts the power if you open up the lid. A little safety feature. Get the wires moved around here for the power supply unit. And the power supply unit has some screws on this side. You have a lot of options with your power supply units. So, and I'm going to go through all those because that's, you know, part of our consideration. If you look on most places like BoardSort.com, you'll see that power supply units can get bought as power supply units with the wire on, power supply units with no wire, or you can take them apart and then get the scrap value of the power supply unit. Oh, there you go. By taking out the board and then selling the board as a power supply unit board or a low-grade board, the ferrous shell for shred, and then the wire. So we'll go through that too. Get this wire out of here. No, I am not doing a timed analysis right now. This is just talking about what value these things can bring to us. The time analysis is a whole different story. These wires connect to this port, this interface board. And I'm going to take a look at whether or not I want to get that cut out of there. And then this wire here is for the fan. And I'm going to cut that and put it out there. The fan for me is a little bit of a problem because my yard doesn't buy fans, computer fans or small fans as small electric motors because they're not big enough. If your yard does, then they may have a category for PC fans. They may not. So I don't know what I'm going to do with the fans. I'll weigh the fans up separate. For me, they're just shred, but I'll weigh them up separate so we at least have some idea what they weigh. All right, now, with this style of connector, I'm not going to mess around with digging into this board. It's a little bit fiddly to get at the board. It's probably just going to be a low grade. It doesn't weigh a whole lot anyway, so I'm just leaving it in the shell. There's a little speaker right here. I'm leaving that in with the shred value. And we're going to get this wire, which is right here. That's your power switch. And we'll look at the different grades of wire that we get out of there. And here's this fan that we took out earlier. All right, big old knock-in screw right there. It's really obvious and it's really easy to miss that it's there. Now we just go along, get screws out of here. If you think you've got all the screws and it doesn't want to come up, it means you missed a screw somewhere. All right, we have to get this button cell battery out of here. Do not put these in the trash. The button cell batteries, this one is a lithium cell. All right, so you don't want to be throwing that away. Some of them are NiCad, so nickel cadmium, and cadmium is very poisonous, so you don't want to be putting that in the trash. Check with your local transfer station. There are places that you can pay money to send these off to. right now I'm lucky that my transfer station will allow me to drop them off there. That could change, and then I'd have to look at one of those companies that I have to pay to ship these off to. Now we have an i5 series motherboard. Boardsort.com separates these as its own category, and Boardsort.com's YouTube site has a really cool video about the development of computer motherboards, why they're different values, what to look for to make them that way. I've done some videos on it as well, but this is a separate category, and you can see it if you look at older motherboards. You don't have, on this board, you don't have as many gold bearing type chips. You don't have any gold cornered BGAs. You've got a flip chip here. We've got a flat pack IC, a few more ICs scattered around. We have lots of capacitors all over the place. There's some MLCCs, especially down inside the socket where you always find them. But if you're looking for the real gold bearing material that's on these boards, there just really isn't a lot compared to many of the older boards that are out there, the other small sockets and things of that nature. You do not have to take this off, the metal frame. You do not have to take that off to sell that to Boardsort. You need to know from your buyer if they require that be removed. Oop, I want to keep, normally I would just chuck that right in that bin. You saw my muscle memory going to work there, but I want to keep that aside for weighing. All right, now we're down to the empty shell, and for most of the time that I would normally spend, well, this is about it. Throw the motherboard there, put the aluminum there. We're otherwise done. But we want to weigh some things here, so I'm going to take a little more time to sort of separate things out and weigh things out at this various stage. So we're going to put the shred back in here. I want to keep these 3 screws out because I'm going to be using these to put the empty power supply unit shell back in place. So I'll put them in here to weigh it, but I don't want to just chuck these in with my bucket because I want to use those once we get done scrapping this all out. Remember, this is all the stuff that we were going to put in back in as shred. That's just plastic, so that goes in the trash. That probably, it's a little bit of metal. I suppose I could go through the trouble to try to pop off all these little pieces, but you know what, I'm not going to mess with it. Here's some more of the shred stuff that we want to get out of here to weigh this up. And we're going to put the faceplate back on. My yard doesn't care about putting the faceplate back on. It's okay if it's there. It's okay if it's not. I like to put the faceplate back on because it covers up some of the holes where things like small screws and stuff would otherwise fall out when I'm scrapping this. So, and that's all plastic. Our wire here, for the most part, in these newer things, we're looking at number 3 insulated copper wire. There just isn't a lot otherwise. But here's where you can get some value from these things. So my yard doesn't require that I cut the connectors off of my number 3 insulated. I do sometimes, but especially if they are gold connector ends. So let's see, you are a gold connector end. All I did was look and saw the gold. So we can cut that off as a gold connector end. That is actually number 3 insulated. It's just a whole bunch of small wires wound up together. This is probably a gold connector end, so I'm comfortable popping that off because it went on to gold-plated pins. You are a gold-plated connector end. This is not a gold-plated connector end, so I'm going to leave that on. You're a gold-plated connector end. With these newer SATA connectors, those, when you look inside there, you can see that one is a gold-plated connector end. Some of them are, some of them aren't. You want to look. Boardsort.com buys gold-plated connector ends. So, you know, your yard may or may not have a separate category for them. It's something that you need to check. This one is a gold-plated connector end. You are a gold-plated connector end. Just because it's a SATA connector doesn't mean it's going to be a gold-plated connector end. It might be, but it may not be. So you want to check it before you throw them in there. And you are not. Oh, I didn't have to cut that off. All right. Now then, my number 3 insulated. Number 3, number 3, number 3, number 3, number 3. This will be number 2. Not much there. Actually, that right there can probably go as number 2 insulated for my yard. So I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to separate this number 3 from this number 2. Yeah, that's kind of borderline number 3 or number 2 insulated. If I didn't put it in there, I wouldn't have anything to weigh now, would I? All right, so remember with number 2 insulated or number 1 insulated, your yard is going to get really picky about other stuff, extraneous stuff on the wire. So make sure it's nice and clean of connector ends and nylon tie down, zip ties and labels and such. The number 3, most yards don't care if there's some stuff hanging on the number 3. My yard certainly doesn't. All right, now the fans. I tried to sell fans as computer fans, couldn't find any buyers, so I'm not going to mess with it anymore. I just break them off and sell them as shred. With my local yard. Thought I had a buyer for them, that fell through. Yeah, that's just the way it works. So we break off the little corners and then we get these screws. Come on, you. Come on, you. There we go. And then we're going to cut the wire, put that with the number 3 insulated. I got the 2 fans over here. Add some more screws to go in with the shred. We need to pound out these screws because those are ferrous and they're in an aluminum heatsink. I've got this contraption. A few years ago when I first got started, my buddy Rifle Scrapper recommended some old heat sinks for this purpose. Works great, especially if you hit the screw instead of missing it. Now we have an aluminum heat sink and we have more shred. This one I have opened up a space here because sometimes I have to pop something down between and it's too small to sit on the edge without, you know, not working right. So these 2 heat sinks give me a lot of flexibility when I'm trying to break screws out and stuff like that. And we're going to go ahead and weigh what we have right now, and then we'll do some stuff with this power supply unit and see where we're going from there. We start out with our I-Series motherboard at 0.99 pounds, the power supply with the wire still on 1.93 pounds, and the shred at 5.61 pounds. Then we have some of the cool stuff inside, the CPU at 0.06, the SSD at 0.11, and the RAM at 0.13. And the connector ends at 0.07, the aluminum heatsink at 0.52, and our fans at 0.31. And our number 2 ICW insulated copper wire comes in at 0.02, and our number 3 ICW comes in at 0.09. The next stage in the scrapping for the power supply unit is just to cut the wire off. And then you sell it as the power supply unit with no wire. And then this would be number 2 insulated after we cut the connector ends off. So we get the power supply unit at 1.84, the wire at 0.08, that's going to be number 2 insulated, and then the little ends at 0.01. All right, so now we need to scrap out this power supply unit. We'll just go around it, look for screws. I'm not going to take those out because that's just holding the fan in there, and the fan is going to get sold as shred anyway. We want to cut that because that's going to hold some wire that might slow us down. This kind of long power supply like this usually means the top is hinged or somehow bracketed in here. So let's see. It's usually just a case that you got to pop it off. There we go. All right. Come on, get out of there. All right, now we get the screws out that are holding down the board. Wait a minute, there may not be one there. Yeah, there's no screw there. You can always tell where the screws are when you look at the backside. And that's the grounding strap right there. All right, now, get in there and pop that up. Come on, you. Come on. Ooh. Oh, I do have to take that fan out though, don't I? Because I want to weigh the fans separately. So yeah, we'll go ahead and take that out. I don't want to get this too bent up because this is where it'll screw back into the computer shell. That's going to be some number 3, but we always want to separate that because that is probably brass or copper. Brass. We're not going to be able to get a weight off of it, I'm sure. It's very, very light. Let's go ahead and get the fan separated so we can add that weight separately. Because that's what we're doing. All right, now I'm not going to weigh up this stuff separately. You could... Here, let's break off this or cut this off. You get away with putting that in with your low grades because that's a typical component on a low grade board. This board now we need to cut the wire off of it. You want to get let me get the screws all consolidated in there so that we don't lose them. And now we're going to go through and do our best effort at removing wire. I always get a little bit nervous about sharing the way the wire is graded because, see, like that's so borderline, number 3 or number 2. I'm going to go ahead and put it with the number 3, but so much depends on how your yard. I mean, there are technical definitions to number 3 insulated, number 2 insulated, absolutely. But does your yard really pay attention to that? You know, it comes down to eyeball. That's a ferrite, a circle of ferrite that the wire's wrapped around. I don't mess around with trying to unwind the wire. I just throw that in with my shred. And here we have the power board. Now, I have a new buyer that that pays differently for power boards than they do for low grade. So I keep these separate now as power boards. All right, well, let's go ahead and weigh all this stuff up so we know what we're dealing with here. Oh, another little bit of number 3 insulated right there. The empty shell of the power supply unit, 0.81. The board from power supply unit, 0.87. And the fan, 0.11. It gets a little confusing because the number 2 and the number 3 insulated both came in at 0.02 pounds. And then we had that tiny little thing that we took off of the power supply unit that we're going to throw in with our low-grade material. Well, we have all the numbers we need. I'm going to let Geek Shark go ahead and do the math. I don't know why. He's been making so many mistakes lately. Hey, do me a favor. When we get over to Geek Shark with the spreadsheets, keep an eye on that guy. I mean, because no kidding, if he's making some mistakes there, I want to know. And, you know, I'll send you a Dunkin' gift card as a way of saying thanks, because I'm just looking. I'm looking to get rid of that guy. So, I mean, I need all the ammunition I can to fire him. HR is really on, you know, they're like, oh, you can't do anything until you document it, you know. So let me know, because I've already sent out one Dunkin' gift card. And if the viewer gets back to me that found the other mistake on another video, I'll be sending out 2 gift cards to say thank you for finding those errors. So, you know, please check it out. Make sure we're keeping them honest. All right, now I don't know why I like to do this, but I like to just do a quick screw here with the empty power supply shed and shell and get it back in, mostly because all right, so, or a not so quick, there we go. Mostly because there's a big hole where the power supply front would have been. And if I don't put something there, then screws and small shred can fall out and stuff. So it's just a way for me to block up that hole more than anything else. And I don't know, maybe I've got shred OCD or something, who knows. The other thing that I will do here is we've already weighed all the shred. So, you know, at this point, what I do now is I take shred from this bucket and I just throw some shred back in here, try to get some of this stuff out of the way. This is from other scraps that I've done. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, these used to be shells on the power supply. So anyway, I like to put some weight back in there, get rid of some of the smaller shred that's laying around. These PC shells make great cavities. All right, let's get over to Geek Shark and do some math. Yeah, so what's up with Dirty Sweaty Shark giving me a hard time? I mean, I'd like to see him do all these numbers. Man. All right, we have the Dell Optiplex 9020 values. The prices that you're going to see are valid of the 2nd of December. This video will come out a few days later than that, but that's when I pulled up all the prices. We're going to start out with the value of the whole PC tower with the hard drive. So that's a category on board sort. Yeah, it didn't have an HDD. It had an SSD. I think that would still be taken as the same thing. 10.18 pounds at 42 cents a pound, so $4.28. Our first scrap was where we took everything out of the computer and we ended up with the power supply with the wire still on. Our motherboard came in at 0.99 pounds. At $2 a pound, that's $1.98. The power supply with wire, 1.93 pounds, so that gives us 87 cents. Our shred, 5.61 pounds. My yard is paying 6 cents a pound, so 34 cents. Those two fans, the first two fans that we got were 0.31. Now my yard only pays shred price for those. You might get more, so that's why I left this as a separate line item in the spreadsheet so you could decide if you would get more. There's 2 cents. Insulated number 3.09, so there's 7 cents for that. Insulated number 2, we're going to get a whopping 2 cents for that. And then the aluminum heatsink at 0.52 pounds at 60 cents a pound, we're coming in at 31 cents. The gold connector ends, board sort's paying pretty good, $2.50 a pound. So we're going to get 18 cents for those. Now the CPU is where things will change potentially. The CPU only weighs 0.06 pounds. The scrap value for a pinless CPU is $10.50 a pound. So that would be 63 cents. But the test and buy program, if this PCU works, we'll get $3 for it. And we'll see what kind of difference that can make a little bit down the line here. The SSD 0.11, and I'm right now I'm taking the peripheral high grade value. At some point, board sort is going to add a SSD category. So this number could change, but there's 55 cents. Now, SSD is one of those things that you could potentially sell on eBay. So we'll take a look at that in addition to the RAM. The RAM right now, this is gold RAM, no shield. There's 0.13 pounds at $43 a pound, really good price. So there's $5.59. Now, the SSD, the RAM, those are the kind of things that we might be able to sell on eBay or Marketplace or some other place for, quite a bit more money. And we'll talk about that more a little bit later on here in the scrap. The scrap values, when we add everything up, $10.56. That's pretty good. And these weights add up to 9.84 pounds, which is really close to the 10.18 pounds, but that's the weight of all that plastic and stuff that we had to throw away. Now, accounting for when the CPU can be sold as a functional CPU is pretty easy. I could have just done it up in the other spreadsheet, but we'd be flipping back and forth and it would get a little confusing. So I'm calling this scrap 1A, power supply with wire and functional CPU. We just take that CPU value instead of the no pin CPU scrap value. We take the test and buy program value at $3. Now, for those of you that have not used this program with board sort, it's very easy. Here, let me show you how that works. So here we are on the boardsort.com website. You don't even have to log in to look at the test and buy prices. You can, and if you don't have an account yet, it's free. Go ahead and register. But whether you log in or not, you can go click test and buy prices. And you see this chart comes up, and we had an i5 right here, an i5, what was it, 4570, I think. So you just see i5 4XXX, and it's $3. It's that easy. Once you log in, you can actually then build the sale of these, and the look changes a little bit because you're starting to put in the quantity. And it's not by weight, it's by number, by unit. So if you actually do want to sell them, you would log into your account and then you would put in the numbers of that type of CPU that you had, and you would get that's how you would generate the sale invoice. So going back to our example here, we end up with adding that $3. So our total value comes out to be $12.93. So we do a little bit better, as you would have expected, because we got that higher value. Now we move on to our next level of scrap, and that's where we just cut the wire off of the power supply unit. So here you can see we had the power supply with, get down here. Power supply with no wire. That gave us a little more material. We had the low grade that went a little piece of low grade. Um, and we add in those other values. And so now our scrap value is $10.34. If we want to account for the CPU being a functional CPU, we do the same thing we did with the other iteration. We take out the scrap value, we add the dollar value, and now we're at 1271. If we scrap it all the way down to the bare board, we're going to get the power supply board. We add another fan. We have a little more shred. We add a little more of the number 3 and then number 2 insulated. So we end up at $10.76. And then, of course, if we account for the functional CPU, we're at 1313. Now, I promised that we would take a look at if we could sell the RAM on eBay. And we get some, I mean, all of a sudden things just change a lot. What you see here is the scrap values that we just generated for instance, here's the whole PC tower sold as scrap. Here's the power supply unit with wire at 1056. Here's the power supply with wire, and the CPU sold as a functional CPU, 1293. So here's all those numbers that we just got done generating. I went on eBay and I looked at RAM, and it was kind of spread out a little bit. I saw the exact same RAM sticks, and some sold for $5 a stick. Some sold for up to $40. So it was really hard to determine what was the right number to put in there. But what you can see that I did, if you look up here in this function bar, you see that what I did was I took the scrap value, I subtracted the RAM scrap value of 5.59, and I added $32. Why did I add $32? Because when I looked at the sold items on eBay, I averaged out about 10 of the sold sticks, and I came up with $32. Now, somebody pointed out in a previous video of mine that I need to account for the fees that average about 13%, but that all depends on what you end up selling it for, right? So the big takeaway here is that if you do sell the RAM and, you get like this $32, well, your value of that PC now jumps a lot because you've gotten a lot more money for the RAM. You may get old RAM that doesn't have that kind of value. You may not get 4 RAM sticks. You might only get 1 or 2. So you can see that what a computer is actually worth can vary considerably. If we take just these values here and we get the average of those, it's $11.74. So when people ask me, what is a computer tower worth? What should I pay for it? I can't really give them a firm answer. I can tell you that the Dell Optiplex 9020 with 4 RAM sticks could be anywhere from 10 to, 428 up to almost $40, depending upon the RAM that's in it and what you do. At this point, when I saw those values for the RAM, I decided, I'm not even going to bother to look up the SSDs, because I'm sure that's going to be the same situation where you'll see some that sell for a few dollars and some that sell for quite a bit more, because there's so many differences in, does somebody want to get the max value? Does somebody just want to get rid of them for, a little bit more than scrap value? And so those eBay prices can be all over the place. There's a reality to the world of scrap PC market. If it's a new enough PC that you can sell it as a functional computer, well, you're going to make a lot more money than anything else because scrap value is always the absolute worst. Now, there's an issue right now because we're going to Windows 11, and so, or some people are getting rid of their 10th generation because it's not supported anymore. The computer still works. There's still plenty you can do with the 10th generation, but that's an entirely different discussion to have. From a scrap value perspective, if certain components can be sold, like RAM or CPUs, as functional components, then there's even more value there. As a final scrap, there's value in understanding what each component is so you know how to get the most value for each component. But what you need to ask yourself is how much time do you want to take breaking all of it down to such a level? Now, there are people out there that call this kind of stuff micro scrapping. This isn't true micro scrapping. We haven't done anything micro at all. All we've done is scrap the computer into its various components. So that's not micro scrapping. This is just scrapping. And we get it into these components, and depending upon how we sell them and what our local yard is paying and who our other buyers are paying, we can do okay. But that's a decision that each of you have to make based on your situation. Hobby scrapper, time doesn't matter. Have a lot of fun. Take your time, have fun. If you're into gold recovery, there are certain things you're going to keep for gold recovery, other things you're going to sell. If you're doing this as a small business, time is money, and you're not going to spend a lot of time breaking everything down to little bits and pieces unless you're getting some decent return for it. Making money on scrapping is all about the math. Sometimes folks get nervous about the math, or maths, as my European friends would say. You don't have to be. Geek Shark, all joking aside, is really good at spreadsheets and math and asking the questions. If you want access to Geek Shark, it's pretty easy. All you got to do is join the Shiver. There's information in the description down below on how you can join the Shiver. And then you can get access to spreadsheets we've already created at the different levels. You can even get up to the point where Geek Shark will build a spreadsheet just for you based on your questions. We've already done that for one of our Shiver members. So by all means, if you need some help with the math, go ahead and join our membership, join the Shiver, and ask away. We're always happy to help. We being Shark Scrapper and Geek Shark. Plus, there's lots of other fun stuff that comes with being a member of the Shiver. You get to help us name the sharks that we adopt. You get your own information, whether it's member-only posts or videos or other things like that. So I look forward to seeing you over on the Shiver. The links popping up on either side of the screen are going to take you to more awesome Shark Scrapper content. And the big round one in the middle is to help you to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a safe week. We'll see you on the next one.